So, without further ado, let's get on to our first speaker of the final session, okay? So for those of you who've been enjoying all of this skeptical output all day today and you're thinking, I'm going to get involved in all this. Well, think of this as kind of like a health and safety talk you're going to get, okay? So somebody with all the experience in the world, please give it up for Claire Klingenberg.
As Brian said, I am going to be giving more of a PSA than an actual talk. I'm going to talk about the less fun part of any kind of activism that you do, and that's the dangers that come with it. So, here we go. First off, I want you to put your hand up if you're sitting next to someone you don't know. Well, okay, introduce yourself. Thank you. There will be a point to this at the end. Yeah. Okay. So wonderful. So what happens when we are doing kind of any activism, when we put ourselves out there? We attract attention, right? Sometimes it can be negative. And it starts off usually just lightly with someone calling us an idiot or a see you next Tuesday or any kind of a swear word. And it can almost feel good to a point that we are attracting so much attention, so much emotion in someone that they're willing to do that. But then it can also turn a little bit ugly, where we start being compared to dehumanizing figures. Like, has anyone here been called Stalin? Dr. Mengele. Oh, here we have a couple. Wonderful. Yeah, I'm also Dr. Mengele. Anyone else have any fun historical figures they've been compared to? Yeah? Wonderful. So what happens there is that when we're compared to this ugly historical figure, it does dehumanize us as a person. And suddenly we are no longer an actual person. We're someone that can be in some way defeated or harmed because we are the enemy. And when that happens, it's, of course, easier for people to go at us and to harm us. And the last part that happens is usually threats of some kind of bodily harm, or in some cases, death. Who has received a threat here? Thanks to your activism. Okay, bodily harm, keep your hands up. Death, keep your hands up. Yeah, right? And so it's stops being fun at that point because it starts being actually really serious. Now, most of us, it's difficult to communicate to people around us that what we're doing as skeptics can bring out so much emotion that someone would actually threaten us with bodily harm or death, because people think, what do you mean? You're talking about science, or you're talking about, facts. Why is that bringing up so much emotion? And that becomes even more hard to explain to police for some reason. So you should go to the police if you do receive threats. But the whole process of being able to deal with the police is not an easy job. And that's kind of something I want to talk about here as well. And that's like in the what should we do part, the practicalities of what happens when you get a death threat. Get a buddy, right? Get a friend, get someone you trust to go or even a threat of bodily harm, to report it to the police, because this process is really difficult. You have to explain what it is that you do, which, as skeptics, that's never going to be easy to start off with. The next thing is to explain why you've become a victim of a threat, and to make sure that it's being taken seriously. And some threats are more imminent, some are just kind of random. We know we have many personalities within our community that had to move addresses because of how badly they were dressed. We know, for example, Edward Ernst had to have his mail checked by the police because there were anthrax threats to him and everything. So it's definitely something that can be taxing for you and your loved ones. And sometimes I think we kind of forget that part about the skeptical activism, is that how it can affect the people around us. So always be sure that when you're following a goal, or when you are getting into heavy-duty activism, make sure you actually know the groups you are being active against. So we have noticed, for example, that the anti-vax movement has become almost rabid during during COVID, and that they've always been very aggressive. They were always aiming their attentions at people who have lost kids, but to this point of them being this aggressive, that has not happened before. And you have to take that into account when you are dealing with them. That it's not just you putting yourself in danger, you're actually putting your loved ones or people close to you as well. So always make sure that it's worth what you're doing, that you're being safe, and that you're keeping those you love safe as well. And the one thing that you have to think about as well is the aftermath. So what do you do with yourself after you go to the police and deal with like the practicalities? Do you share this on social media, what you've been going through? If you feel strong enough, then please do, because these people love to live in the darkness. And once you bring them out to the light, they stop being so brave. So if you, unless there's a unless you get a direct command from the police not to do so, please do share these kinds of experiences and these kinds of threats on social media, and share it if you can with journalists to show, number one, you have to show that being a science communicator, science popularizer, a skeptic is not something that can go without any kind of it does come with a reaction, that people are afraid of facts sometimes so much that it does get to this point. And the more you share your story, the safer you make people around you, because then their stories are taken more seriously when you go out and speak about yours. Definitely seek out a mental health professional. If you're a woman, as we've just heard, make sure you do an extra check, and maybe, probably you can see if there are women who have gone through similar stories, because as female activists, we do face a different type of threats online, and it's usually just already name calling is different because it's much more focused on how we look, and then of course the threats are of sexual violence, which is something our male counterparts don't really face as much. So that's another element to add into that. So do look out for mental health professionals. Make sure that you have your friends and rely on your community. And that's why I wanted you to introduce yourself to people next to you, because we're going to be here the whole weekend. And you want your community to grow, and you want to be as friendly as with them as possible, because it's going to maybe them in trouble next time. It's going to be you in trouble. And the bigger and stronger community we are, the better we can support each other through these times and give each other tips, help each other out. So the more skeptics you meet this weekend, the better. So you can exchange names again, and Twitter accounts, and Facebook accounts, and Mastodon accounts, because we're skeptics. So of course we're going to be using a social media no one else does. So go on with that, and have fun with your activism, but always remember to stay safe.
Claire, thank you. Let's kick straight into the questions. First up from Bremner. Any advice for when the police or the legal system are the source of the problem rather than a refuge for it?
As in that you get threatened by the legal system, I assume. Well, that depends. Definitely seek out an organization that deals with prejudicial violence within your country. And I know that sounds weird for us as skeptics, because especially most of us have this skin color, and most of us are cis. So you would think that what are you talking about? We're not really minorities, right? But actually, I was also surprised that was the group that took my case, was a group that dealt with prejudicial violence, because it is about you purporting a certain philosophy. So it does kind of go under that, and they will help you how to deal with the police. Plus, they already have contacts within the police force that will help you navigate the whole system. So reach out to nonprofits that deal with this kind of issue within your country.
Great, thank you. Okay, next is from the skeptical Gumby. What if you have no hard evidence beyond this is what they said?
Well, if they said it, then record it. Have them say it again. I mean, no. So if someone someone doesn't just go out of nowhere and just say something like that. There is some kind of buildup. So you will try to get evidence of that buildup. If it's just a random person somewhere that doesn't know you or you don't know them, there might be some kind of camera there. There might be some kind of photos that were taken by someone else. That person might have some track on social media where they've already talked about this way or have shown these kind of opinions before. So it doesn't just go from 0 to 100 without any between steps.
For sure. Okay, next question is from Steph. No community is homogenous. How do we keep ourselves safe within this community?
Well, a great thing that QED does is that they have people that they entrust our safety to. So I'm sure that's going to be in our programs again this year, where they have representatives that we can talk to if we are feeling unsafe or uncomfortable within our community here. If you mean outside of this conference and just in your everyday skeptic life, make sure you have a skeptic buddy within your community that you do trust, someone that you can rely on to help.
Fantastic. Yeah, just a quick comment in our little Slack channel. Somebody in our little group was threatened with being hit by the anti-vaxxers in the Piccadilly Garden yesterday, apparently. So just watch yourselves when you're out there, folks. Manchester's a fun place at the best of times. Okay, next one's an anonymous question. Can we minimise the threats by interacting positively with skeptical content online?
Yeah, of course, we can try to be as positive as we want, and that's going to help us with a certain group of people. But just the fact that we are attacking someone's belief system, even if we do it in a non-attacking way, we are still presenting opinions that do attack a belief system. And that is the most sensitive thing we have, even us as skeptics. So always be ready that no matter how positively try to communicate, you might still incur someone's wrath.
Okay, for sure, thank you. All right, last question, and it wouldn't be a Q&A if it wasn't from Igor. Are we as a society becoming better or worse in this regard? Do you receive more or less of death threats overall? Have you got like a little clicker that you keep?
So I think on one hand it's easier to make them because of how anonymous the internet is. On the other hand, we have better systems now to be able to track them down. So it's kind of a toss-up. But we have noticed across various groups really the extremization of the behaviors and how the behaviors we couldn't imagine that would be on like an everyday occurrence are happening more and more. For example, just look at the spread of the sovereign citizens group. It was in the US forever, and it did occasional attacks here and there. Unfortunately, they have shot policemen in the past. But then, especially during COVID, it just snapped and the violence increased. And then they spread into Germany. Do you remember last year in December, that was that massive arrest wave in Germany of the sovereign citizens movement. They called themselves Reichsbürger. If Annika is here from the European Skeptics podcast, she will tell you more about that. And then within 6 months, I had them in my country. They're calling themselves the Czechoslovaks. And their first big entree onto the scene was knocking down a courthouse door. So they, compared to how long the American group evolved into violence, within the way how it spreads, they kind of already get at a certain level from their counterparts abroad. So take that into account as well, that when you have a group that already is at a certain level in a different country, it's going to start off much closer to that level than it would have been at its from its complete beginning.
Okay, great. Folks, she's had a lot of hate in the past, so give some skeptical love to Claire Klingenberg.